Hello, I'm Elly, Hiby, Director of ICAM. To mark the 20-year anniversary of ICAM, I invited my two ICAM colleagues to join me for a chat. So that's Pankaj KC, our ICAM Chair of Trustees, and Alex Hammond-Seaman, representing RSPCA International, and also one of our ICAM trustees. We talked about how ICAM came to be, what has happened in the sector since we were formed, and what we see coming next. And here are the edited highlights.
So, Alex and Elly, 20 years since ICAM started. What a momentous occasion, hey?
It is.
I really want you guys have been part of this founding moment, and I really want you to remember how that was and what led to the establishment of this really important coalition.
Okay, so truth be told, like all good ideas, it started in a pub. So it was Andrew Rowan and myself. So Andrew Rowan was the director of Humane Society International at the time, and I was sharing with him that I just had this great conversation with Alex, and also with Michelle Mortars from I4, and I'd learned so much from them, and it had been a really fabulous, robust discussion. And Andrew said to me, that should be an easier thing to have on a regular basis. We should have a platform for that. And I was like, well, that's a good idea. And from that came the ICAM coalition. So it was very much established at the beginning, this sort of peer support network across several international animal welfare organisations, and who were working on the same subject, tackling the same challenges. And we came together as a kind of a peer support group. And from that grew guidance and the idea that actually there were terminology that we could have common terms around and common concepts that we could put in our guidance, and it just really grew from there.
And at the core, we were just a group of peers and professionals working together and sharing and learning from each other. And I have to say that I personally have learned a huge amount from working within ICAM and being part of ICAM. I think 20 years ago, I realized I knew nothing really about dog and cat population management. Now I know quite a bit more, and I think that's thank you to working within ICAM with amazing individuals and amazing organizations, and collaborating and really realizing that we can be a lot more impactful working together.
Absolutely. And I think when we first came together, we were just those individuals within those international organizations, and then recognized that there's this much wider sector that we were all working with. And so I think the thread that's been through ICAM the whole time has been this challenge and this learning and trying to progress, and we've started to now share that much more widely and listen for lessons much more widely as well. And I think the conference is a big part of that as well. It's a good example of it. But Alex, as you say, you've been working in this field for a few years now, so just over 20 years. Now, obviously, it's changed quite a bit over that time, I believe. So I want to...
25, actually. 25.
Oh, 25. There you go. So over that time span, what do you think the major changes have been?
Yes, I think the introduction of the very first global standard by the World Organization for Animal Health has sent a very important signal as well to the government and member countries. That the first chapter was adopted in 2009 and then was subsequently revised in 2022. The name changed from stray dog control to dog population management. So yes, very much based on the principles of evidence-based, humane, systemic. And so I think that has been quite fundamental and very important for us and as for the NGO sector and for our members as well, for their advocacy and for engaging with the veterinary professionals and the governments in building more humane, sustainable systems.
I think from my perspective, who has a little bit more of a fresher eyes on this than both of you, I think one of the fundamental changes that encompasses everything that both of you just said is that the concept and the term dog population management and cat population management is much more well known now. When I joined this movement in 2014, I still remember dog population management, cat population management. It was a very niche term understood by very niche audience. But now I can confidently say, with my global experience and global hat on, that this is very much well understood term, both at the people level and at the political level. I think that has been one of the biggest shift in the last 20 years. And this is thanks to many NGOs, big and small, operating at grassroots level and at international level. It's thanks to them and the people who has worked tirelessly to improve the relationship between humans and our companion animals in the last 2 decades and beyond. And this, I genuinely believe, has also allowed us to not follow the footsteps, a dark one that most of the developed countries had followed, who have a history of calling dogs and cats in lesser enlightened times, when there were no innovations like microchipping or vaccines or sterilization like we have now. I genuinely believe that there are opportunities for countries around the world now to forge a very different, compassionate path.
I agree. So the other thing from my perspective, looking at coming to the field from a science background, is that when I arrived sort of 20 years ago and looked at the body of scientific literature around dog and cat population management, it's pretty woeful. There wasn't a lot there, and if you look now, there really is quite a robust body of evidence. That's both in peer review journals, but also just, I think, in general, the approach that the animal welfare sector takes to this work. So this concept of there being a hypothesis that we're testing through our intervention, that we measure and we interpret, and then we improve what we're doing based on evidence.
And Elly, I remember very clearly when we started that we acknowledged that was our biggest challenge, really was, and we wanted, as a coalition, we really wanted to encourage the data collection and evidence base, and so it's wonderful to hear that 20 years on, it's become a norm. It's happened. So I'm interested to hear though what's coming next. What do you expect will happen in the next 20 years, given that we covered a lot of ground and actually can be quite happy, I think, with what we've achieved and where we are. But what do you think the next 20 years holds?
That's such a big question, Alex, and such an important one. I really wish I had a crystal ball where I can accurately tell how things are going to pan out. But there are some known knowns. And of course, there are unknown unknowns, some certainties and some uncertainties. When you were asking that question, the first thing that popped up, the first certainty, I should say, that popped up in my mind was urbanization. Urbanization is going to continue, probably at more faster rate than it is happening right now. If I remember correctly, something like 240,000 plus people are moving to urban areas every single day. And that has a direct consequence on the relationship between humans and our beloved companions, dogs and cats, and the lives of dogs and cats independently too. And that will offer lots of challenges and some opportunities too.
These growing urban areas, there's a change in the workforce, in housing. People are more likely to live in apartments. And so we're starting to see the owned cat population starts to exceed the dog population. That's definitely happened in Europe. There's now more owned cats than there are dogs, and I believe that's happening in the US. And then in many of these middle income countries where we've got very speedy urbanization, that trend is happening there as well. And that will then play out in the free roaming population as well. I think we're going to start to see cats becoming more of a challenge. And so we need to keep up with that trend and make sure that we also give a good share of our attention to cat population management, and also where dog populations come under better management and the free roaming dogs reduce, we do then tend to see an increase in free roaming cats. Dogs and cats, I think, compete often for similar resources, so the carrying capacity is kind of overlapping for those two species. So as the dogs decrease, so there is more capacity for the free roaming cat population to increase. So from an ICAM perspective, I see us working more on cats in the future.
That's such an important point, Elly. The cat ownership, the rate of cat ownership increasing. And I must admit, I might be a little bit more of a cat person, as much as I love dogs too. It's the same. But another thing that came to my mind, Alex, is about artificial intelligence and the way it's shaping our societies, our behaviors, and our daily life. And I'm confident that this change, however it might transpire in coming days, is going to have direct impact on our relationship with dogs and cats too. One can argue, for example, that AI making us more smarter will free up more of our time, and more people would want to have pets and to look after pets, to have more companionship with pets. And that in itself poses both challenges and opportunities around the world. And ICAM, I think, is very well placed to address the challenges and to embrace the opportunities both that the sector provides. And going further, artificial intelligence is also going to shape the policy making processes, and that will have also impact on the relationship between us and our companion animals.
Yeah.
I think we really need to keep an eye on this.
Yeah, and make sure that those AI algorithms are fed with some really accurate information so that policymakers that are leaning on AI for some of the decision-making information get great data underneath those large language models. I think that AI could be a great opportunity for things like dog and cat population estimates and monitoring over time, lots of opportunities there. And I think that there's also some other technological advances in our field that we really need to keep an eye on and I think really be early adopters in, which is things like non-surgical fertility control, which Candice has just told us about, oral rabies vaccination. Those are technologies that already exist, but there's lots of developments in those areas. And, you know, I'm keen that the wider animal welfare sector is looking for those great opportunities, conscious that there are potentially dog and cat health challenges and risks there too. So being sensible about how we take on these new technologies, but really we should be looking to be the early adopters here.
From my perspective, I think we'll probably start to see stronger regulatory frameworks for dog and cat population management. And although as an NGO sector, we can do quite a lot, we can't do this alone. So we will need governments to step up really and build good regulation, strong regulation. Just earlier this year, we had the very first European regulation for the welfare of dogs and cats and their traceability adopted, which is an incredible step in the right direction. And I'm sure that the regulation will have a significant impact on the free roaming and stray dog and cat populations across Europe, because its focuses on introducing harmonized identification and registration and control of breeding and selling, both critical sources of unwanted and abandoned dog and cat populations across Europe. So I'm extremely happy about this regulation.
Thank you, Alex. I was also really delighted with that new regulation that EU had just passed. And just want to remind ourselves that we are here for cats and dogs. They are absolutely our primary beneficiaries. We want them to have a really good life. That's why we are here.
They are our primary beneficiary. I would say that the animal welfare NGO sector is really, I guess, our close second beneficiary. I mean, they really are the agents for change across the world, and we've had many of them presenting this week and joining in on our chats and Q&As. I would say that the wider NGO sector that's doing all the hard work of dog and cat population management, for me, is my inspiration and I guess my guiding light. And I think the learning that ICAM has been able to distill is not only from our membership, but from the many partnerships that our members have with the wider animal welfare community. It's very much a sort of a hive mind feeling. There is one thing I wanted to ask you both, and it's something about a risk that I've been noticing recently. So I sometimes worry that the tolerance for free roaming animals on the streets in some places is diminishing. I wondered if you'd seen that risk play out.
Yes, thanks, Elly. I have to admit that I noticed, I came across situations where I noticed that is increasingly becoming an issue especially in urban areas, and it's challenging, and I think it will become more challenging as cities grow, and it's a challenge that we need to address. Otherwise, we risk alienating those communities, and we risk alienating the public, and we risk, by not hearing their concerns, I suppose we risk losing support that those programs very much need. So I think it's urban settings bring a whole range of challenges for people, for communities and dogs. And I think, I'm not sure if I have an answer, and I think there is probably something that needs to be carefully managed, and there is more work for us to do. But I think we need to acknowledge that they are there. I think we need to acknowledge that they're there, because not acknowledging those issues are only likely to fuel intolerance. And so I think we need to hear those concerns and really think about how we mitigate those where they occur in programs.
Yeah, that's such an important question, Elly. And when you were asking that question, it took me right back to two phases of my life. The phase one of growing up in Kathmandu Valley in Nepal. And to our distinguished participants who are from Nepal, I'll be a bit more specific. I grew up in ward number 19 of Kathmandu Valley. The reason I say that is, I'm sure our participants would agree, that's one of the area with highest density of free roaming dogs, community dogs. And my experiences of growing up is with wonderful memories of growing up with these dogs. They were never a street dog or a stray animal to us. We grew up playing with those dogs. I always had a pet dog at our home. That was our family dog. But I also had so many dogs to play with. Every time I went out in the street, I would end up playing with all of my counterparts, my friends, grew up playing with these dogs. Having said that, I also remember very rare, just couple of incidences in 2.5 decades of my life in Nepal, extreme instances where people took matter in their own hands. And these are normally the times when dog bite results in a fatal incident or a really unfortunate incident. And then next phase of my life was in United Kingdom, a very different kind of relationship between companion animals and humans. And I don't have any judgment on which one is better. I think the most important for me is a harmonious coexistence where dogs, cats, and humans have a life that they deserve. So I think this call for a blanket approach to zero street dogs or zero street cats around the world is a misguided one, at least at this stage. We don't know how the world will progress in 50 years' time. We don't know that. But right now, I think calling for zero cats and zero dogs and planning your policies, regulations, and interventions for that is not going to yield a good result. I think it is going to create lots of community conflict. It is certainly not going to be good for dogs and cats. And it certainly is not going to be good for world as a whole. So I would say harmonious coexistence. That's what we aim for. That's where we need to be.
Very good. Thank you, Pankaj. Well said. Well, I think we've probably come to the end of our time now. So I just wanted to finish by thanking you both. It's been really fun. It's lovely to have some time together to just talk about the history and also look forward to the future as well. I did want to say thank you in general also, just over the last 20 years you've represented our membership, and in that role I've benefited hugely from your ideas and your insight, but also as trustees I've benefited so much from your leadership and your support. So thank you ever so much in general for the last 20 years and for today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
you
you.
too,
Thank you,
Elly, for your
Elly.
leadership.
Bye.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you,
Bye.
Elly. Bye.